I'm talking to Chuck House, who is a former Director of Engineering at Hewlett Packard and is currently the Director of the Media X Lab at Stanford University. Chuck, what does the Media X Lab do?
We're an industry affiliate part of Stanford where we can work with any number of companies. We typically have about 20 members who pose problems that we can advertise widely to the faculty. And we put out a request for proposal. We get back multidisciplinary requests.
What sort of problems?
Questions of how do physical and virtual worlds intersect, or what does the social networking have to do with educational processes, or you know, what's going to happen with IP in a digital media world. Questions about you know, what's going to happen with this digital revolution in terms of you know, mashup and link up and destruction of intellectual property.
Now, what does all this have to do with collective intelligence? Because this conference is about collective intelligence. Where does the collective part
a huge
come
piece
in?
of what we're concerned about, what's really happening in the world right now, I believe, is there's an enormous capability to interconnect the whole world. That's, you know, whether it's, you know,
electronic
web 2.0 or 3.0 are so different than 1.0 in terms of our ability to interact and participate. So jobs are moving overseas. We've done studies with a number of companies where 1 out of 5 people has never met their boss face to face. Half of them never expect to in their lifetime. That's a fairly interesting statistic. How do you get a raise from a boss who's never met you? How do you get resources when resources are tight?
Well, you can't get fired either, can you?
Well, the good news might be that. So the whole point is there's a tremendous redistribution happening of where knowledge can flow and how people can contribute and what the competitive landscape is.
So
the second piece is that participative skills are going way up, participative skills and desires. So whether it's YouTube or Facebook or MySpace or all of these things say that people want to participate. That a corollary is they don't want to take direction. So now you've got a group of people that don't want to listen to a boss. They've never met their boss. You've got a fairly interesting, different social dynamic coming in terms of company organizations and things like that. So that's a fascinating combination of things coming together. We study that at some length.
Now, is that a good thing if nobody wants to take directions?
It can be a very good thing for innovation and creativity. It can be a very awkward thing in terms of organizational effectiveness.
Now, are you looking to create some kind of new social model, some different way that...
Very much so. We're looking at how do legal systems emerge in a world like that? How do management structures emerge? How do people form collective ideas of you know, a collegial decision on where to go? So when you talk collective IQ in the Doug Engelbart sense, we think a lot of the learning that he had postulated and a lot of the points of view that he represented have a great bearing on that question.
Now, is the fact that there are a lot of people pooling their knowledge, does that necessarily lead to greater intelligence?
No, I don't think so. Sometimes it's the Tower of Babel.
So what's the ingredient that makes a group act intelligently together?
We think it has to do a great deal with how much agreement on common goal you can develop, how much you can get the group to concentrate on process first, so that there's a resolution mechanism, so that there's you can handle disputes, you can handle disagreements. Let me give you an example. So we're trying to put a timeline together for the Computer History Museum. It's almost exactly the timeline we're going to do for Doug tomorrow, and it's it's how this all unfolded and who did what. So the question is, what were the significant points about artificial intelligence? And we had someone, the curator of the museum, said we ought to get the 3 best people together, and they'll select the best ideas over the last 40 years. And one of our people on the panel said, there are no such 3 people. I can get 15 together Saturday night that collectively will be far better than any 3 you can name. Okay? And they agreed with that premise, and then they said, but the problem is those 15 won't agree, and you can't get them to agree. And we pointed out the difference between trying to get the 15 to put input in versus trying to get the 15 to agree. So you have the 3 to do the winnowing and the guidance and the shaping. You have the 15 for the input. And I think that's the way to view the collective intelligence, is that what you're seeking is a diverse input and a strong feeder system that can cross-connect.
But who ultimately...
But somebody has to still decide what you're going to do with that. So there still will wind up with a hierarchy, or still wind up with a leavening management structure.
So does collective intelligence address that? Like, once everyone has all the information they need, how is the decision made and who makes it?
So there's a great paper written by Don Michael some years ago. Don was a very good philosopher working at the U of Michigan. His paper was called "Who Decides? Who Decides?" And historically, it's been based on power. It's been based on money. It's been based on position.
So a person says, "I decide." You don't like it?
Yeah. That's
too bad.
My way or the highway. You've heard that in business a lot. So what happens in World of Warcraft is the group decides. Mm-hmm. So the guild master is the leader for the moment. If the foray is successful, they get to stay the leader. Mm-hmm. If not, they get cast aside. So it's a very democratic, egalitarian shift of leadership. And I think what's happening now in the current generation is they're getting much easier with this notion of high risk, short-term leadership. Pass over the cudgel, take it back over. I think we're going to see a much more fluid structure between roles that people play.
Well, we have a lot of problems in politics today. A lot of branches of government don't seem to be talking to each other very much. People don't always seem to have the information they need to solve the problem. Can collective intelligence be applied to this so that when people are responsible for solving problems, they can't say that, well, if only I had known this, because they do know it. It's all available.
Well, we're fighting human nature here a fair amount. So it'd be hard to, I wouldn't want to assert that this idea is strong enough to buck the government structures we have in place. By the same token, it's easy to imagine that you could get people with some of these techniques to appreciate that a higher goal is a better way to think about things. We had an example where NASA figured out Hurricane Katrina, the pathway for it and the probable destruction for it 96 hours in advance. The year before, they had proven this technique, and NOAA, after NASA issued several press releases, NOAA forbid them to make any public pronouncements because it was NOAA's territory. The cost on Katrina was 36 hours of lost time. Mm-hmm. And a misunderstanding on NOAA's part of how significant Katrina could be.
Would collective intelligences be in discrete networks? For example, there's this network over here using collective intelligence to advance its interests, and there's another collective intelligence over here, and maybe their interests are not the same. Maybe they're even opposed. Or do you think more of a model like one collective intelligence for all?
Well, one of the difficulties with digital media is we tend to find these factions or these communities developing almost a homogeneity, and I think that's a real problem. One of the great things about a newspaper, old days, you and I grew up with newspapers, was that the stories were printed for you. You could choose not to read them, but there was sort of a smorgasbord there. If you set all of the filters on your digital input so that it's stuff that you've already predetermined you want to read, you lose a lot of that serendipity. And so one of the concerns we have with these digital mediated structures and these communities of interest is you can build more closed capability and more silos rather than less. That would be, I think, a disastrous finding. But that's certainly the technology, in many respects, leads us in that direction.
Is the technology basically values neutral? It can be used either for good or for bad, and it just depends on...
That's what we say. The classic scientific take is all technology is agnostic, and it's a question of how it gets put to use.